Hi friends, it's Ashley and welcome back to the channel. Today's video is another reading vlog and I do have a theme for this video, so I'm going to be reading cozy fantasy books that feature libraries and bookshops, and I've had this idea for a while now, and so I have a number of books that I could read in this video, and so I'm really excited to start this vlog. And so right now I'm not sure how many books I'm going to read in this video. I'm pretty much just gonna read until I'm tired of reading cozy fantasy books or until I decide I want to end this video. And so the first book I've already started, which you saw in the beginning of the intro. It's Legends and Librarians by Pandora Pierce, and I started it on audiobook. It's also available on Kindle Unlimited as well, and I'm about 5 chapters in, so I'm still at the beginning. But I've had my eyes on this book for a while now because it just sounds like so cozy and comforting. So it's about a girl who's a librarian, and it was her childhood library, the Misty Mountain Library, that made her fall in love with books and reading. But unfortunately, over the years, it has fallen into disrepair, and so it has become her goal to go back to that library and fix it up and reopen it. And so at the beginning of the book, the library that she's currently at is having a book sale, and this is her last day at that library before she goes to the Misty Mountain Library. And so she's like, in the beginning of the book, hiding books under tables and stuff and under chairs because she figures, oh, like I'll buy these books afterwards because it's a good deal and then I'll be able to use them to restock the Misty Mountain Library. But someone who's at the book sale catches her in the act, and he is an adventurer. And so they end up having an exchange, and at the end of the exchange, he is kind of like, oh, I'll buy all the books that are in this sale. And she is like, oh no, like I need those books for my library, but also this library needs the money. And so she can't really refuse him, and so she sells him all the books begrudgingly. But then at the end of the exchange, she's like, oh, these books are now ours. And so he's like, you can hold on to them for me. And she's like, oh, can you help me bring them to my new home? And so he agrees, but little does he know that it's the Misty Mountain Library and it's a trek to get there. But they end up going there and he drops her off at the library. Hi, so future editing Ashley here. So I somehow deleted the clip that came after the clip that you just saw. So I'm here to bridge the gap and finish explaining the story of Legends and Librarians. So our adventurer, Rowan, who's also our male love interest, ends up bringing Nissa, our main female character, to the library. And he offers to go inside and help her cleaning up. And at first she accepts, but then when she gets there and she opens the door, she sees something that makes her slam the door shut, and then she turns and looks at him and is like, oh, it's okay, I can handle it myself. So he is like, really? Are you sure? And she's like, yep, it's fine, you can go now. And so he ends up leaving. And so she opens the door and we learn that she saw a tiny flying dragon in the library. And so now she's kind of like, what in the world is going on? And so she ventures inside. And she ends up running into this puppy, but it's not just any puppy because this puppy has 3 heads. And she is like, why does this dog look like Cerberus? And it turns out that this puppy came out of a book. And so there's this whole thing going on with the library where there was wild magic. And so now the library is bringing book characters out of their books and into the real world. And these book characters are not thrilled that she is there at all. They end up chasing her out of the library. And so now Nissa has to regain their trust if she wants to enter the library again and start restoring it. And so our story goes from there, and then the story is dual perspectives, so we get Nissa's point of view, but we also get the love interest Rowan's point of view, and he does end up going back to the library to check on her because he's worried about her safety and he knows that something isn't right. And so he does end up also helping her out with restoring the library as well. And so my first impressions of this was just that it was really cute and heartwarming, and I really loved the idea of storybook characters coming to life. Hi, so it's now Sunday, February 15th, and I have finished Legends and Librarians, and I absolutely loved it. And this book was exactly what I needed at this moment in my life. It is the very definition of cozy fantasy. Reading it made me feel warm and safe, and it made my heart just feel happy and full. And my favorite part of the book, and the part of the book that I think really shone, was the magical library and the storybook characters that the library brings to life. There was a bubble tea drinking red panda named Mochi that was always giving out snacks to everyone, a grumpy demon lord, tiny dragons that just want to have fun, a giant but gentle flower-loving golem, and others. And these characters were just all so charming, and they really made the story feel magical and whimsical. It also just like the overall story of our two main characters, Nissa and Rowing, restoring this library just felt so heartwarming and hopeful. And this book really felt like a love letters to libraries. And the overall story and Nissa's love of libraries really resonated with me, because the library also played like an important part in my childhood, just like it did in hers. And the library in the town that I grew up in especially has a special place in my heart. Speaking of Nissa, her and Rowan's romance was just so wholesome and heartwarming to watch unfold. There is no spice in the relationship, and it's just like full of cute and heartwarming moments. And personally, since I love the warm-hearted and cozy vibes of this book and just had an absolutely delightful time reading it, I am giving it 5 stars. And this is book 1 in a series, but it's part of a series of interconnected standalones. So this one does stand on its own and everything does get wrapped up in the end. And at the end of this one, there is a teaser for the next one, and the next one is going to follow the Demon Lord and another character that was introduced in this one. And when I found that out, I was so excited because I really want to learn more about the Demon Lord, and he's just like such a fun character. And I feel like we've only like scratched the surface of his story in this book. So this morning I did start my next book for this video, and that is The Long, Long Goodbye of the Last Bookstore. So I'm not too far in, I'm only about 42 pages in. But that being said, this is pretty short. It's only about 200 pages. And so this one is the second book in a series. This is the first book, The Devotion of the Surgery Room, which I read a couple years ago. And this series does have a more contemporary setting as it takes place in the modern everyday world in Japan. But that being said, the magical aspect of it is our main character in this series, he can talk to books, which I think is just so cool and whimsical. And so this first book was divided into 5 different chapters, and each chapter was kind of like its own mini arc and its own story that could kind of just stand on its own. And in each story, Misubu would go around helping books and the people that had special connections with them. So in one of these stories, he is helping reunite a book with a person. In another one, he's helping a new author and helping his book sell better. And so these were like just like fun, lighthearted stories, but some of them were also very emotional as well. And so this one is centering around this bookstore in the town, and it's the last bookstore in the town. And it just hasn't been doing well lately because like of the rise of social media and less people are buying books. And so the owner of the bookstore ends up passing away, and so now the bookstore is going to close. But before they close, they're going to have like one final book sale to find homes for these books. And so the first character we're introduced to in this one is actually not Masubu. It's actually the part-timer who has been at the bookstore the longest. And so while she is grieving over the death of the owner and trying to handle things and get ready for the final sale at the bookstore, Misubu ends up showing up out of like nowhere. He says that he is there because the owner of the bookstore said in his will that he entrusted the books to Misubu. And so he is there to help ensure that the books all find good homes. And he ends up telling the part-time worker in this book that he can talk to books, and she just reacts as any normal person would and thinks that he's just a crazy delusional high schooler. But even though she thinks he's a little crazy and weird, she does honor the will of the bookstore owner and lets him help out at the bookstore and at their final days there. And so I've read the prologue in book 1 so far, And the prologue does kind of start off on a sad note with the death of the bookstore owner. But then we go to book one, and in book one, it's kind of like this book was. We're following another character and a certain book that he has connections to. And Misubu is using his power to talk to books to help out this character in the book. And the first story was just really heartwarming and also a little sad. Like, it definitely made me emotional. It almost made me cry, but it did end off on a happy note. And so the next chapter I'm going to be reading next is called The Secret Name of Tomb of the Wild Chrysanthemum. So I finished A Long, Long Goodbye of the Last Bookstore, and I'm giving this 5 stars. This book was just a beautiful and deeply moving story about how books have the power to connect people and to help them through tough times. And the stories that were in here are just so hopeful and heartwarming and uplifting. But that being said, like, this book isn't 100% cozy. Even though the stories at their core are hopeful and uplifting, this book does deal with some heavier topics. For example, this book does touch upon suicide a little bit, so just be aware of that. Like, it's definitely cozy at its core, but it's definitely not 100% just fluff. Any of the stories in here are like mini stories that stand on their own, but there are some in here that are connected to each other that tell a bigger overarching story. And even the ones that can stand on their own and can be read like as little mini stories are still connected to all the other stories, because they all feature people whose lives have been touched by this bookstore and the owner that has just passed away, and they're all going to visit the bookshop for one last time to honor the bookshop's memory and the late owner and the special memories that these people have at this bookshop. And my favorite story in the book was the side story called Together Forever with Kaiketsu Zazori and the Mysterious Aliens. I just thought that story in particular was really cute and just like a lot of fun. And that one is like kind of more on the fluffier side, but it does still deal with some serious things as well. So I know I mentioned that this is part of a series, and this is the one that comes first, but actually after reading this one, you definitely don't have to read this one at all in order to fully enjoy this one. I would actually say that I feel like this one is more accessible to everyone, and I would say if you love books and bookstores that you'll probably really enjoy this one, and that this one will really resonate with you. This one I also really enjoyed, but I feel like it's more on the anime side, and so it might not be for everyone. So the next book I'm going to pick up is going to be Must Love Librarians and Libations by Maisy Magill. And this one is part of a cozy fantasy standalone series. And so this is book 3 in the series. I haven't read book 1 yet, but there is a prequel book that comes before that one, and I read that one and I loved that one. It was so cute and cozy, and I feel like this author could become a new favorite cozy fantasy comfort author for me, and so I'm really excited to read this one. So this one is about a grumpy gargoyle librarian and a cheerful half-elf party planner. And the little overview of the book says, she's planning the party of the year. He's 1000% done with her sparkly ideas. One grumpy gargoyle, one sunshine half-elf, and one epic clash that will go down in Moonshine Hollow history. And so it just sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun. And it also lists the tropes are in here. So there's enemies to lovers, forced proximity, she falls first, he falls harder, grumpy sunshine, magical library and cozy small town, protected alpha with hidden soft side, magical mishaps, tiny dragons, found family and positive female friendships, and happily ever after guaranteed. Hi, so I'm here to finally update this vlog and to wrap it up because it's been like a month since I last updated this vlog and weeks since I finished the last 2 books I wanted to read for this video. And the reason I haven't updated in a long time is because when I was reading these books was when I lost my voice, and so I didn't give any updates while I was reading them, and I've since then read other books and filmed other videos, but I really enjoyed both of these books, and so I want to share my thoughts on them, and so I need to wrap up this video. So first, Must Love Libraries and Libations. So I ended up really enjoying this book. Like the prequel, this one was very delightful, it was really cozy, and I loved the small town vibes. And I really liked both our main characters in here, our half-elf Primrose and our gargoyle Erasmus. And they both felt like very well developed and fleshed out characters. So Primrose on the surface, she is very sunshiny, very much an extrovert, whereas Erasmus is grumpy and an introvert. And so of course when they first meet, their opposite personalities clash, and those opposite personalities of theirs just made their dynamic so fun to read. However, underneath those outward personalities, they do have some inner turmoil and insecurities that they are dealing with, and through their relationship and interactions with each other, they do help each other to overcome those. And overall, their relationship was very sweet and cute. However, there was a spicy scene really early on in their relationship before like they had formed like an emotional attachment to each other, and I personally like the characters to form an emotional bond before a spicy scene happens, and so I personally wasn't a big fan of that. However, after that, they do form that emotional bond, and so I enjoyed those scenes that came afterwards of them bonding and just having like cute and sweet moments together. And my favorite part of this book was the library setting and the bookworms that live in the library. So the library in this book is magical, it's sentient, and the bookworms that live in the library, they live in a tree in the library, and they are like little dragons without wings that are the size of cats. And even though they don't have wings, they have magic that gives them the ability to fly, and they're just always getting into mischief, and they're just so adorable. And then another fun thing about this book is that at the end there are recipes for the food and baked goods that is featured in this book, which I thought was really cool. And so overall, I really enjoyed this one, and I'm giving it 4 stars. And then the book I read after that was A Dragon Rider's Guide to Retirement by Hani. And this one I absolutely loved. Finishing it just made me feel like so fulfilled and just like really happy. And I just keep thinking about it as well, and I'm excited to get back into the world because it is made up of interconnected standalones, and the second one is coming out at the end of this month. And so this one, compared to the other ones I read in this vlog, had more of like a sad, melancholy feel to it at the beginning. And that is because of our 2 main characters in the situation that they are in at the beginning of this book. So the story is dual perspectives, and one of our main characters is William, and he is a dragon rider, but he is forced to retire when his dragon does not survive a battle and he loses his foot in the battle. And so he ends up going off to Safe Haven to retire. And then our other main character is Kala, and she is a war witch, but her powers have been fading. So she ends up retiring and goes back to Safe Haven. And Safe Haven is where she grew up, and her aunt has actually left her bookshop. So she goes there to run the bookshop. This town is a small place, and so the 2 of them end up meeting. And their first meeting does not go well because they were actually on opposite sides of the war. And so even though they never actually met each other, they have a lot of hatred and anger towards each other. But the thing is, Safe Haven is neutral territory, and so everyone there is accepted. It doesn't matter where you came from, and going there is pretty much like a fresh start. And so the 2 of them have to kind of learn to live in the same town. And that is where like the coziness of this book comes from, is from the town of Safe Haven and the inhabitants that live there. The town very much has cozy small town vibes, and everyone there like looks out for each other and is friendly toward each other, no matter like where you came from or your race, because all different races live in Safe Haven. So you have humans, but you also have orcs, and you have half giants and elves. But the one thing Safe Haven doesn't have is firefighters. So at one point the butcher shop catches on fire, and since they don't have any firefighters, they were having trouble putting out the fire, and so Kala actually ends up using her magic to put out the fire. But the problem with this is that it exhausts her because she doesn't have the magic power that she used to have. So William decides that he's going to put together a fire department, and he's going to do it by befriending the sea dragons. And the sea dragons were another part of this book that added to the cozy and whimsical feeling of it. And so William starts observing the sea dragons and the process of befriending them, and a couple of the other villagers end up joining him in doing so, and Kala also eventually joins their little group as well. Over time, you see Kala and William starting to put aside their differences and starting to really get to know each other rather than just things they've heard about each other. And their relationship overall is just really sweet and cute, and it feels very natural. Like, it's not forced at all, and just kind of like happens from them spending time with each other, just like a natural progression. And also, there is no spice in their romance. It is just wholesome. And then, so in addition to their characters, the town of Safe Haven also has some other very interesting and fascinating characters as well, with one of them being an elf named Coney, who is the mayor of the town and has some very interesting elf magic. And then there's also a blacksmith named Nevin, who is a half giant, and he is also part of the group who is trying to befriend the sea dragons. And the second book is actually going to be about him. That one comes out at the end of this month on March 31st. And I think out of all the books I read in the video, this one was my favorite. It was also the one in which there was a bookshop setting, but I feel like it didn't play as big a role as the libraries did in the other books I read. Overall, I really enjoyed all the books I read in this video, and I recommend any and all of them if they sound interesting to you. And so with that, I'm going to end this vlog here. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, bye!